Mo Salah is communicating more with his comments outside St Mary's, on the weekend than maybe some people care to give him credit, maybe some people care to actually read into, and maybe also we're talking about things that ultimately are just side comments. But going into a week where they play Real Madrid, Man City, and then a couple of weeks where there are some huge games which could be season-defining for Liverpool, as Liverpool will make it to about the halfway line when they, finish these next few weeks. Mo Salah's comments feel like they rock us as a fan base, right? They don't feel nice to hear. But at the same time, they're not really communicating anything new, not only to us, but also within Mo Salah's group and also within the group of players. A lot of people are saying, well, this is a terrible thing to say at the start of the week when Liverpool are about to play some of their biggest games of the season, some of their biggest rivals, some people who they have really failed to summit over the past few years, Real Madrid, Man City. But I think it also shows that within the dressing room, there is a feeling and there is a knowing as to what the real situation is when it comes to negotiating contracts with Liverpool. And that's kind of my point here. Contract negotiations, obviously, similar to the Toni Kroos at Real Madrid situation. It'd be lovely if it was just a 5-minute process. It would be lovely if it was just, this is what I expect, this is what you want. Okay, we're both in agreement because we're all going to win out of this. Liverpool's model and Mo Salah and arguably other players' models is they're at two different ends of the scale, right? Mo Salah wants to be valued for what he does to, probably the highest paid player in the Premier League level of scale. Liverpool want to make the most out of the money that they have and have a couple of big players, including Virgil van Dijk and Trent and Salah, all asking for renewals or upgrades on contracts, which they could probably give them. But realistically, and I think here's the thing, is that the best thing to give each of these guys? Does continuity, and this is a rhetorical question in an extent, does continuity always equal success? Especially if what you actually believe is that change internally at the club might be needed. Now, Mo Salah is prolific. Mo Salah is probably the greatest right winger to ever play in the Premier League. He's one of the greatest scorers to ever play in the Premier League. Of course, he deserves all of the respect. And in this conversation, it's always difficult not to sound disrespectful when discussing Mo Salah because realistically, the emotional answer, the ego answer is, give the man whatever he wants. I love him. I want him to play more for my club. I want him to produce. I want him to do X, Y, Z. The real question is, where do Liverpool think Mo Salah is in their future plans in the next 2, 3, 4 years? And where does Mo Salah think he is in Liverpool's plans? Liverpool signed Mo Salah to the next couple of years. He will still be prolific. He will still score some incredible goals. He will give the club true confidence in the right wing position. But 2 out of those 3 years, he will also be away at AFCON during January, so he'll miss a good few crunch games. Not that we even know what those crunch games are yet. And he'll also be in a situation where, as we've seen in the past, there have been some situations where drop-off happens post-international performances. Now, I'm not saying again that Mo Salah will automatically drop off after an international tournament, but we will have some sort of loss of playing time during those moments, right? And I'd imagine that Liverpool feel like they might end up signing another African player or another player who comes from another continent where they have to go away and do other things anyway. But that's kind of beyond the point here. We don't know who Mo Salah's replacement would be. And realistically, there isn't really a nice way to transition Mo Salah out of the club. Now, ask the question, and I think this is where the reframing of the Trent Alexander-Arnold situation is, the framing of the Virgil situation is. Realistically, they want to get Salah done last because Salah will be the highest paid player at the club. If you make him the highest paid player at the club first, then the other two will want to still be equal to that or have a status which is commensurate to that. That's not going to go particularly well for Liverpool at that point. And then it doesn't go particularly well for us as fans. How do you make a succession plan bringing in players who are going to play at the very top level, not nostalgic games where, hey, they might have had a bad game today, but he's leaving. I'm talking like 100% every week, week in, week out, and transition a new centre-back in, and transition potentially, Trent into midfield, therefore needing a new right-back in that position, or needing to sign someone else who could go as a backup for that right-back, or does Trent's idea of where he plays in the team, Trent's really the issue in terms of contracts, very different to Salah, because if he wants to play in midfield, Liverpool can't necessarily promise that. If he wants to play at right-back, then great, but does he really want to play right-back? Yeah. And realistically, can you transition another player in if you've just signed a new contract for Salah, a new contract for Van Dijk? Realistically, a season ago, you could have signed a new centre-back and said, right, Give it 1-2 seasons, Van Dijk will leave, there'll be a transition, and you will be in that position, roughly. There's potential for you to be in that position, right? Salah, same goes for him. You sign as a right winger for Liverpool, and potentially you will be the next thing in that position. Of course, Liverpool have just signed, we're trying to sign Konate to another situation. Kwanzaa, we're trying to sign him, we've obviously signed him. We've then got people like, realistically, we can talk about youth all we want, but Ben Doak is not going to come back in and reproduce Mo Salah numbers. He's producing very good numbers in the Championship. But let's have a serious conversation here, guys. He's a very, very good player, but youth very rarely, if ever, has ever stepped up to that level. As good as he is, as good of an understudy as he would be for someone like Mo Salah, Ben Doak is not, if Mo Salah leaves at the end of the season, coming in and producing Mo Salah level numbers. Which leads me to the next point. Do Liverpool want someone? Obviously, we always want players to produce to the maximum level. Would Liverpool put the same emphasis on the right wing if Mo Salah was to leave? Would they shift the emphasis within the team and say, realistically, Mo Salah was very, very good, but what we want is a striker who is going to produce in this time. And we are going to use the money, the 50, 60 million that we wouldn't spend on his wages and the 150 grand a week or whatever the maths do, 200 grand a week if we spend 30 or 40. That gets us a very good player. It gets us a player who would produce Mo Salah level numbers. Not that there are any players in Europe, by the way, that produce those numbers. And we believe that we can shift the emphasis away and we'll replace those numbers in the aggregate with more numbers from our striker, more numbers from the left wing, Dominic Szoboszlai in midfield, Curtis Jones in midfield, all these kind of things. We would change the emphasis of the team. Trent would become more obvious as a goal-scoring threat. We would have a left-back who would maybe become a goal, all these kind of things. Realistically, I don't feel like that is... because of Mo Salah's prolific level of numbers, that's realistically not going to happen. But what you would not do is ask another player to come in and produce prolific Mo Salah numbers. Stay with me. Mo Salah is prolific. He is incredible. But put someone else in that right-wing position, as we haven't really, and what do Liverpool really do? The only other time we've really seen someone else in that position is when Mo Salah, because he hasn't been injured, by the way, another huge benefit of having someone like Mo Salah at the club, we've not seen anyone in that position because he's never vacated that position for long enough for anyone else to make that their own. In the period where he went off to AFCON, we didn't lose one game. There were some other decent performances in that position, but realistically, we can't rely on Jota to do that. We can't rely on Nunez to do that. We can't rely on Gakpo. We can't rely on Diaz. Diaz is a very good winger, but we can't rely on him to do that. We can't rely on Chiesa to do that. We can't rely on Harvey Elliott to do that. We can't rely on any of these other people to the extent that we can rely on Mo Salah. Makes a very compelling case for the 350, 400 grand a week, whatever you want it to be, that we should give Mo Salah. But at the same time, I take you back. What if the emphasis was to shift in the team and Liverpool were to say, actually, what we want is to sign this guy here, because realistically, if you're bringing in Richard Hughes and Michael Edwards, then you've got to have a plan. There's got to be some other area where you can get those numbers. And realistically, you would try and bring someone else in who would make up for those numbers. Be that a midfielder that you go, well, actually, we will control games more, so we do not need to score the same number of goals in each of these games. You can't legislate for games where you go behind particularly badly, but if you feel that you are becoming a more conservative team or control the game differently or move the ball differently, then realistically, Mo Salah's prolific level of goals, you could taper that away if you wanted to, right? There are other ways to play the game. Of course, it'd be lovely to keep Mo. Of course, we've seen him adapt. We've seen him become a real leader. I don't want to lose 3 leaders in one season. I don't think that's necessarily realistic. But I also think that Liverpool probably have a look at reshaping the squad and to say, how can we reshape when we can't spend a serious amount of cash? Because what we've done is committed to X, Y, and Z. And then when those people, if those people drop off, which I think is inevitable with Father Time always looking around and going, who do we take next? Then who gets the blame for that? Liverpool will be blamed for being strong-armed into these things or whatever it is. There is never a good way to frame any of these situations because guess what? As I've seen with all these other things, headlines on YouTube today, Mo Salah is leaving Liverpool. Yeah, okay, we get it. I don't think a lot of these people who are breaking these headlines care about the club. I don't think they care about the outcomes. I think they just literally want the clicks for the money. That's not That's not what I'm here to discuss. I want an honest conversation about whether we want to keep Mo Salah or not. Now, he's a unicorn in terms of his numbers. But I'm asking, realistically, what is it that we're expecting from any of our owners? Because as consistently as we say FSG out, as consistently as we say, oh, I want to get rid of, and I want this to change and that to change, how realistic is it to expect all of the things that our owners do to be positive, to feel positive in that moment? Is it not an owner's responsibility to take difficult decisions and level and measure those things up? Do you not think that surely if Mo Salah's numbers, if Liverpool had the indicators, which I believe of any club looking at these things, you would think that they would be capable of having, said Mo Salah is going to go and produce the numbers that you need in the next couple of years, and you're going to be able to replace him, and you're going to be able to do this, and you're going to be able to win the league with that, do you think that they would not have re-signed that contract like yesterday? There is an argument that the owners have had similar history. The Mookie Betts situation in Boston, where the Red Sox let Mookie Betts go to the Dodgers. And now he's producing all-time great numbers, and I think even won he's won multiple leagues there. That's not good. It's not good to see as a Liverpool fan. And Boston have inevitably declined, but they also did get to the Final Four a couple. Anyway, it's not really the point. The point is it's a different competition, but there is history there of that, and I do keep revisiting that. But I will also point you towards, and I'm reticent to do this, but the other side of this, where someone says, you're disappointed, and it's like, well, of course you're disappointed not to get a new contract offer. It doesn't say I'm disappointed not to get a new contract offer to sign it and stay. Liverpool have apparently made contact with this team. They've just not made the offer. What we're doing here is playing like a semantic game. What we do when we're doing negotiations, and maybe he is trying to push Liverpool, maybe he is trying to say, like, hey, do something here. If I was the player in the dressing room, I think all the other players look at that and go, good for you, you get your money, buddy. And fair enough. But I also think the other side is true, where going into a big week, what are you achieving going into a massive week by saying that outside Southampton Stadium, you've just put in a really prolific performance, it's a great time to capitalise, but realistically, is that best for Liverpool Football Club if everyone knows about what's going on behind closed doors at that point? Maybe you think it is. Maybe you think everyone in the dressing room is really sick of this, and actually everyone needs to know about the way that the owners are treating me, or whatever it is. But why are we only doing it one way, where it must be the owners that are the bad guys, when there are multi-millionaires because of the institute that we support? I'm just saying, like, if it is down to, holding people responsible, should we say, then I think we should also be holding the players responsible here. And that should go both ways. It's not to say that because we see them as multi-billionaires and we think of the millionaires down here with us, and realistically, Mo Salah money-wise is way closer to us than he is to these guys up here, right? So it's like billionaires, 10 tons of crap, them, us. Just because he's closer doesn't necessarily mean that our interests align in the same way. Doesn't make him a bad guy, but it also doesn't mean that the reverse is true. That therefore, well, we're all on the same page with Mo and it's those guys at the top. That also doesn't wash with me. I think that's relatively unrealistic, actually, to say. He was amazing yesterday again. It doesn't help anyone's argument. He's been incredible this season, in terms of goal contributions since this season started. He's got like 22, Haaland's got less, Saka's got less. There are other players who are getting a lot of money. That's kind of beyond the point here. It's kind of beyond the point at all when you're talking about any of this. The point to Liverpool and Liverpool fans is, well, really, first of all, do you get the enjoyment? Do you have the relationship with the player? Do we love that guy? Absolutely. Do we love when he puts on a Liverpool shirt? Absolutely. Does that mean that we as a fan base and as a group are able to judge whether he will do that for the next 3 to 5 years? Realistically, 2 to 3? If he's signing a new contract over the age of 30? I don't know. But it makes for really good clickbait and really good, what's the phrase? posturing and you play essentially what I'm saying is it makes really good posturing on a fan channel level for us to go, yeah, like I want him to stay. Make him. He should be able to sign with anything. This should be any number. These guys are idiots. I know better than these millionaires and billionaires because I'm seeing behind the scenes. Realistically, Liverpool is feeding a load of numbers into a machine. By the way, it's not just one machine. We should probably stop looking at it as one machine and just going, the machine just spits out one answer. There are multiple people sitting around with the answers that they have. There are probably people within the club that think, keep Mo Salah. There are probably people within the club that think, well, we could sign someone else and we could see how that guy does. Or we could bring Dope back and bring another kid in for 40 or 50 or 60 million and then this would happen. We don't know what Liverpool's transfer kitty is next year. We don't know what the plans are in January. You know, we can go from previous years and go, well, we won't spend very much. But there have also been years where we spent lots. So, you know, it's all well and good us saying, well, don't let Mo go. We don't know what the other side of the plan is. Because in a realistic negotiation, you don't go, well, here's our plan. We're not going to negotiate. It's not how it works. And so, of course, these things play out. And, of course, they make good contract fodder or, like, news headline fodder. It just frustrates me when I see people kind of clickbaiting and using our club as a headline rather than as a pastime, and it's something we enjoy. I was watching a movie analysis. This is something I really kind of want to explore on the channel soon. I was watching a movie analysis channel last night. It was a TV show analysis. It was about The Bear. And it was speaking about character motivation, what the director wanted, what the exec producer wanted. And I thought to myself, at very elite level football, a very elite level sport, right? What the exercise feels like it is do the very best thing that you can do to the best of your ability to win and to shoot for the very top thing. But that is an agreed upon idea. I'll talk about this another time on my other channel. But that's an agreed upon idea. Mo Salah is like an actor within this that brings us real pleasure and makes us feel so good. Like, what's the point? Like, if he just scores goals, then sure, that's one thing. But we like him because of who he is. Or what he represents, not necessarily who he is. I don't know if we truly know who he is. We can see a lot of who he is, but like we don't truly know him because we've never spoke to him on the pitch or off the pitch. The director is Arne Slot. The exec producer is Richard Hughes. Michael Edwards is like the studio exec. And, you know, Universal or Sony Pictures or whatever is FSG and those guys. Why do we never see it that way? Why do we never go, what if someone else can be Spider-Man now? What if you, Mo, were, I wish I could think of a Spider-Man actor now. Tobey Maguire. But actually, we want Tom Holland, I want to say. There's another one in between, though, that everyone loves. The other one, Garrett. The point is, this is one Spideyverse. What if there was another Spidey? Do you know what I mean? I'm just saying, sometimes it helps to look at it from outside of the media bubble. Appreciate you guys. Chat to you in a while. Much love. Bye.